This is the Spirit from Crusader Industries, and it's fast become my standout favorite dailyable ship in Star Citizen. While it's not the most hard-hitting ship in its price range, what it lacks in its offensive prowess it more than makes up for in all-around versatility and gorgeous lines. It hits that sweet spot between aesthetics and function to deliver an unforgettable entry-level multi-crew ship experience. And that goes for both the C1 hauler as well as the A1 bomber variants, minus the E1 of course since it's not out yet. Hey guys, I'm Morphologist, and welcome back to An Architect Reviews, the series in which I employ my real-world professional experience in the field of architecture as well as in game development to examine something in the digital realm and give my opinion on it. It's just an opinion though, it can't hurt you. In today's long overdue video, I wanted to finally take you through the Spirit series and why I think it may just be one of the best lineups for newer players looking to get into that entry-level Star Citizen multi-crew ship experience. Starting with the ship's exterior for both variants, moving on to their interiors, and then finally I'll talk about the ship's performance and general gameplay. If by the end you think I did a good job and deserve it, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support. And you'll also probably want to be subscribed anyway if you want a chance at winning that C1 I'm giving away, the very ship I'm showing you in this video. I'll give it away to a lucky subscriber who comments below why they might want the ship and how they might use it. Oh, and if you don't have the game, don't worry. It actually comes with a game package, so you're all set to go. So let's get started. Choosing what ship to buy and then eventually fly, either in-game or with real money if you're buying a package for the first time, really comes down to your personal preference. What makes you happy? What do you want to do in the game? And how will that ship make you feel? The Spirit series, for me, managed to instantly feel iconic, especially starting even with the most simple design form it has, its silhouette. It immediately is recognizable as having Crusader DNA, which I love. I love the Crusader series, and I've said that before on this channel. Being reminiscent of its cousins like the Ares and the Star Runner. It shares that flat nose that leads to swept back curves and wings that you'll find both in the top-down view as well as on the side view. Although I've always felt the Star Runner got a bit chubby after the concept drawings, but that's a separate video, and I've already made one on the Star Runner if you're curious. Being a little thick, though, isn't a problem for the Spirit. In fact, it's one of the thinnest profile ships for its size that I've seen in the game. At 47.5 meters in length and 44 meters in width, it's a big boy in plan, but if you look at its side view, it's only 10 meters in height. Which is why it's so surprising when it disappears when it's flying straight at you or you observe it from the side or the rear. And like so many ships in Star Citizen, it's a bit bigger than you might think. It's roughly a bit larger than a 737-800, a pretty common commercial aircraft you've probably flown on yourself if you've done any kind of flying in your life. So then the ship is low and fast looking, and it's further emphasized by its attractive two-tone paint scheme, the white on gray, that helps improve the ship's overall look, highlighting panel layering that we've seen before in earlier ships to help create additional visual depth to the design. And I think it's really needed because the silhouette would otherwise be quite massive. These panel breaks and changes in color help break up the otherwise massive look, separating the fuselage from the wings to help make it appear a bit more slender than it is. But these separations and plates also help draw your eyes as they narrow in on the intake for the engines, helping to accentuate the intake and maybe even celebrate it a little bit. It really draws your attention, especially with this little antenna thing that sticks off on the corner of the engine. And I think emphasizing this big mechanical intake helps further reinforce a sense of power and speed while this thing is just standing still. Some of my favorite details include the VTOL engines, which when deployed reveal a perched avian-like look, like their little wings sticking off, that I've seen also on the Hercules, so it's cool to see them borrow that language from its larger brother ship, and it wasn't the only thing that was borrowed from the Hercules. Take a look at these size 3s that fold neatly into the wings just like on the Hercules with its size 4s. helping once again to keep these ships look sleek, just as on its bigger brother. Finally, the party trick of the ship happens between the two rear fins, where you'll find a track on top of which sits either a turret in the case of the A1 or a tractor beam in the case of the C1. The module is able then to slide along this track and deploy either on the top position or on the rearmost position, just hanging beneath the fins. In the case of the C1, this allows the tractor beam to move boxes in and out of the ship, although I have to say that this is a bit tricky to get used to. Well, with the turret, it's a bit more self-explanatory. It helps you get a better angle, I'd say, on anything that might be chasing you or even what might be below you, which is where I think its versatility really comes in handy. But probably my favorite is the canopy, which is quite similar to the other ships in the Crusader line. There are these horizontal panoramic view type canopies that wrap around the edges of the flight deck, something more akin to what we might see on modern aircraft, again giving it a very aircraft look. And we can't overlook the ship's underside. Just as on other ships in Star Citizen, it has well integrated retracting gear that's nothing special, but what it has that's particularly unique is opening doors for its missiles in the case of the C1, and additionally opening doors for the size 10 bombs that the A1 is capable of dropping. And they open up in a really interesting sequence that's clearly been a cool design choice to give it a bit of a party trick in addition to the rail it already had. But I digress. I could probably go on for another 20 or 30 minutes, which I'm sure some of you might enjoy, talking about how I like its panelization or how I think the curves are really well crafted in this design, making it not feel too blocky or clumsy, or how I like how these little parts of the panels flare up to give it an additional feeling of speed. I mean, there's just so much to take in that I love about the ship's exterior, but alas, it's time we take a step onto the interior because there's still more left to see. Getting on into the interior of the Spirit series happens through its rear cargo ramp. Here, just around the periphery or the edges of where the ramp comes down, you'll notice that there's a red light. This is another cool feature of the Spirit series that allows you to know where you'll need to make sure there are no obstructions when opening the ramp. But after the ramp drops down in a beautiful and complicated sequence, you're greeted with yet another airlock door. Now, this is a pretty smart design that's unfortunately absent from earlier ships designed by CIG. This actually enables you to make sure that you're not decompressing the inner cargo area when opening the rear ramp. This will become especially concerning when you have sensitive cargo that can't be exposed to either vacuum or perhaps corrosive atmosphere on some of the more dangerous planets and moons you'll find around the verse. We have those actually presently around Hurston. And of course, there's always that nasty problem of explosive decompression when opening an airlock. Aside from environmental concerns, this additional door also provides you with an additional sense of security, another entry point that a possible boarder would have to pass through before getting into the sensitive areas. But before we move on into the cargo area or the bomb bay area for the A1, I just want to point your attention to some interesting bits in this airlock space. The access to some components is actually gained through here through a series of doors, and while this would ordinarily be a bit concerning for an airlock, if somebody's in your airlock on such a small ship, you're probably already in big trouble, so I'm not really too concerned with that level of security issue. If nothing else, it's going to make swapping out components manually a bit more convenient than on other ships. Finally, stepping through those doors though, we're finally gonna find ourselves inside of either the cargo bay in the C1 or the bomb bay in the A1. We'll start first here with the C1 variant. The space is actually exceptionally large given the size of the ship. It makes good use of what interior space is available. It's actually capable of holding up to 2 size 32 SU boxes, the largest ones you can currently buy, and can hold a total of 64 SU in total. And you can actually fit a bit more in here if you throw stuff into the aisle. Aside from holding boxes though, it can park up to a Cyclone-sized vehicle, which makes for a pretty convenient ship to carry those types of vehicles around if you want to do any sort of ground-type gameplay. Especially for, say, if you're doing ground mining, which uses, say, the Grey Cat mining vehicle. In terms of design though, the interior borrows a lot from earlier designs in the Hercules and Mercury Star Runner cargo bays. Much like those ships, the interior color scheme starts with grays on the floor with red accents, and moves up to white walls interstitched with panels that reveal mechanicals, up to a darker black ceiling, helping to really finish off the space. This contrast gives it a visually appealing look, and it's further complemented by a pretty well done lighting scheme that gives you enough light to see what you're doing in the space. It comes together to create an altogether believable cargo deck. Unique though is the A1's bomb bay, which is very much unlike the A2 bomb area in the Hercules variant. This area feels completely bespoke, with red upcast lighting and dim soft blues near the top offering a dramatic contrast, giving the size 5s a very ominous presence. It's particularly a treat then when you are here and when the bombs are armed and then deployed. There's a whole animation process for it. At the end of the cargo and bomb bay though, you'll find a round door that you'll probably find familiar if you've been on a Hercules. It seems to be the exact same model. And stepping up that set of stairs beyond the door, you'll find the exact same space in both variants, and I presume the E1 as well. The first space is yet another airlock, and this contains more modules that you'll have to access in case of emergency or when you want to maintain or replace different modules. And I think having this airlock here provides additional safety for the most vulnerable innermost part of the ship. Moving beyond the final door though, we finally find ourselves in the living quarters of the ship, as well as just next to the flight deck, which exists in a combination space. While I would ordinarily prefer them be separate, given the plethora of safety airlocks and the small nature of the ship, I think this configuration feels appropriate. While compact, the available interior space here is yet again very well utilized. Both variants, and I presume the E1, come equipped with a small toilet, kitchenette, a set of suit lockers, a proper locking weapon locker, and 2 beds with an accompanying personal storage lockers just above the bunks. Narrowing in what I like in this space is, again, I think the spatial use is excellent. However, there are some opportunities to improve the space, particularly with the bunk beds. I feel they could have been on top of one another to give an area for a place to sit down and eat just to the other side. After all, there is a kitchenette, so it presumes that you'd be here long enough to want to have a meal. Aside from that, while I think the cozy design of the bunks is great, I would have preferred a more personal touch to the space, with perhaps a warmer reading lamp that you could toggle, and perhaps a shelf for personal effects and decor. While the A1 would probably be a short-range patrol ship, the C1 seems more likely to be something used for long hauls, akin to something like a modern freight truck. Having a space then to make your own, to give it more of a home-like feel for the occupants, seems like a better consideration for the users. Perhaps the best bit of the space though is the one that I've left until now to discuss, and that's the flight deck. And I'm calling it that because it's a pretty small ship and I don't think it really has the size to be called a bridge. After all, the whole ship is reminiscent of an aircraft, and so I think it's appropriate to call it a flight deck. Getting up to the controls of the ship starts with a fantastic animation with you sitting down on a seat that sits on top of rails, and it slides up those rails to bring you up and elevated to look out the canopy. The elevation of the space makes the flight deck feel particularly special, especially when the light is casting through the canopy into the flight deck area. It feels a bit like a throne, actually. Once nestled in the control position, the view out the canopy is limited, granted, to a panoramic view, but I think this was a purposeful decision, as having the ability to look below you was experimented on with the MSR but not followed up with any other ship. The presence then of a more analog control panel in the center, complete with the toggle switches, gives the ship yet again a more aircraft feel, which again I think is very intentional. However, you may have noticed that there is a little bit of a design flaw. That one ramp entry that you saw is the only way to get on and off the ship, which could potentially be a bit of a fire hazard, especially given that there are actual fires that we'll have when engineering gameplay comes online. One can use escape pods if needed, but it would be preferable to have an alternate exit somewhere in the cockpit, perhaps a hatch that you can open on the bottom where a little ladder would deploy, or maybe an escape hatch out the top. I would have preferred to see something like this, but, well, hopefully it can be improved in the future. Overall though, in terms of design and user experience, the ship is near as perfect as I could want out of a ship of its size. It's one of the reasons why it's become my favorite dailyable ship, but it's not the only reason. Next, I want to briefly touch on performance and gameplay. Talking purely about the ship's mechanicals, starting with the C1, it comes with a single size 2 shield, a single size 2 power plant, 1 size 2 cooler, 1 size 2 quantum drive, 4 size 3 weapons, 2 of which are on a turret under the nose, 4 size 4 missiles, and a single size 3 tractor beam on the rail on the roof that goes down to the rear cargo bay. The A1 is nearly identical with the same single size 2 shield, power plant, cooler, and quantum drive. However, it has 4 size 3 weapons, 2 on a turret, and another turret which is used remotely with 2 size 2 weapons that can be operated by the co-pilot in the co-pilot seat, and it has the same number of 4 size 4 missiles. And of course, the A1 swaps out the cargo bay for 10 size 5 bombs, being the biggest difference between the A1 and the C1. Both ships though share the same maneuverability and top speed of 1,120 meters a second, making it not the most fast ship in the game, but pretty quick nonetheless. Its real specialty is its acceleration though, and getting up to that top speed, making it great for getting out of a difficult situation when you're caught out in the open. And that's definitely not what you want to be in if you're in either variant. Well, the A1 is a bomber meant to go into an area where there's potential enemies. Neither ship is well built for handling sustained damage, and that comes down to its large silhouette and its single size 2 shield. That makes bombing in the A1 particularly more difficult than the much stronger A2. Prowess in PvP though was never meant to be the ship's strong suit. In all variants cases, they're specialized ships. Honing in then on why I feel this ship in particular is such a great choice for newer players looking to get into multi-crew ships is that it's right on the edge of what's usable for a solo player as well as when you want to play with a friend. These kinds of considerations will become even more important once we get engineering gameplay later on. And this versatility extends to the ship's capabilities. Well, it's not the best in combat, its 4 size 3s and additional size 2s with the A1 variant make it more than capable of dealing with a variety of combat missions alone or with a friend. It's also large enough with its cargo bay to make sense for cargo running or just when you want to transport vehicles around, like I said earlier in the video. In sum then, its fantastic design alongside its versatility and usability make it possibly my very favorite dailyable ship in the game at present. Well, that may change with upcoming ships. The Spirit is sure to stay in my hangar for a long time to come. I just can't get over how good the ship looks from pretty much every angle. It's such a great alternative to either the Cutlass Black or the Freelancer, which I see as its direct competitors. Let me know though down below. Do you like this ship? Did you choose it over those other two? And if so, how do you like it? Let me know down below, and don't forget, by subscribing and commenting, you get a chance at winning the C1 with this game package. See you guys in the next one.